New thing, our main focus for the coming year is this thing called the Phosphorus Sustainability Challenge. And Matt is going to walk us through an exercise related to that. But a lot of it's related to what I said about my boring cocktail personality, which is, people don't know that they have a half a pound of phosphorus in their bodies. They have no idea about what phosphorus is about, what it's for, how it impacts the food system, how necessary it is. And what can be done to make it all work better. And so that's the purpose of the Global Phosphorus Sustainability Challenge, and Matt's going to walk us through it. It's going to be one of the main emphasis for the Alliance during the coming year.
Thanks, Jim, and thanks to all the speakers so far. We've had really great speakers, and I've enjoyed all of them. This is, I think, the third one of these that I've done, and Jim has always emceed these events. And he gives kudos to everyone else in the room, but he never gets kudos. So I thought we could give him a round of applause for everything that he's done. Yeah. On top of being a world-class limnologist and a guy who's advanced a lot of research knowledge in terms of biogeochemical cycles and ecological flows or ecological impacts. He's done a ton. So we're all owe a great debt to him. And thanks for that applause, because what I'm really doing there is I'm angling for a raise. Personnel exercise is over. Okay. So thanks. So as Jim said, we're starting this new initiative. I'm very excited about this. This is our big splash today. We're along with the GISP. We're launching something called the Phosphorus Sustainability Challenge. And what this is it's a platform where organizations, big and small, private or public, can make commitments to lower their phosphorus footprints. That can be through more sustainable use of phosphorus or recycling and recovery in a sustainable way. And so I'm going to tell you all about the challenge and how that works as the slides go on. I do want to frame it a little bit. I don't want to belabor the framing because we've already had some great talks about sort of the impacts of phosphorus and sort of the issues behind it, but just a couple slides on this. One thing we know is that we're using more and more phosphorus, right? So our population is burgeoning. We have to feed more people. That's led to a lot of pressures on demand. And that demand has led to really severe ecological problems, ones that aren't really appreciated nearly enough, I think. So the National Lakes Assessment was done in 2012, and they found that 40% of the lakes in the United States were in the most disturbed condition. I think it's 46% of the U.S. rivers and streams, according to the National Rivers and Streams Assessment, were evaluated as having high levels of phosphorus. And the problem's getting worse. And if you think about it, freshwater is the most important commodity and natural resource that we have. We can't live without it. We need it for everything. And phosphorus has been demonstrated as the key driver of eutrophication. I think is the most important pollutant then of our most important natural resource and commodity. And we really need to pay attention to this issue a lot more than we are in the world of sustainability. It's a hugely important issue, but it doesn't get nearly as much recognition as it needs to. And that hurts a lot of people in this room, actually, and I'll get to that in a few minutes. We don't talk so much anymore about the supply problem, and so there's been a reevaluation of our supplies over the past 10 years. We've kind of gotten through the price spike that alarmed everyone. And so I want to provide a couple quotes on this, and I think, Steve, you might be the author of the first one, possibly. Okay, so world resources of phosphate rock are more than 300 billion tons. There are no imminent shortages of phosphate rock. Another is from Scholz and Wellmer. This is not me, Scholz. This is my doppelganger. He lives in Germany, Roland Scholz. He said the reserve production ratio is about 266, which is one of the largest among all mineral commodities. Okay, so I think there are some supply issues, but I think we do a disservice to the phosphorus sustainability cause nowadays if we sound the alarm about peak phosphorus. We're not there anymore, and we want to follow the science. And so we're not pushing this so much. There is a supply issue in that we do have a highly concentrated supply of phosphorus. So just as OPEC controls 82% of the global oil reserves, and we consider that a highly consolidated system, just in West Africa, 71% of the phosphate reserves are here. Now, we have great trade relations with Morocco, and we don't have any issues there. But I'll remind you that in the last 100 years, we've had 2 world wars that have greatly impacted those trade routes. And God forbid we should have another one, or a huge natural disaster, or more instability in northern Africa, or an asteroid hits Morocco, or whatever you want to think about. We need to have more supply resilience. And one way to do that is to mine the phosphorus that's already in the soil. And another thing we can do to diversify supplies is to recycle and reuse phosphorus, as Bruce has given a great talk on. I do want to sound a bit of a cautionary note, though, about recycling. So the UN Environment Program did an analysis of metals recycling. And they looked at all the various metals that are out there and what their rates of recycling were. And they looked at trends. What drives recycling? Why are some metals recycled more than others? And they had 3 drivers that they came up with. One is that the rates reflect the degree to which materials are used in large amounts. 2 is, are they easily recoverable? And 3 is there high value in the recovery? So if you think of phosphorus in this context, is it used in large amounts? Sure, absolutely. Is it easily recoverable? Not so much. In some applications more than others, but never really easily recoverable. Is there high value present? No. I mean, it's still trading at $100 per metric ton-ish. And this has dogged us the whole time with the sustainability movement, is phosphate rock is very cheap. And so if you try to recover it, you don't necessarily get high value. You can, of course, couple it with other processes that increase the value, the proposition of recovery, and that's important. But I think, I think that we can't pin all of our hopes on recycling. We'll get to higher rates for sure. We're not going to get to 100%. We're not probably going to get anywhere close to 100% anytime soon. And we have to think a lot about sustainable use as well. And I kind of want to bring that up too, because if you go to a sustainability conference these days, and I've gone to quite a few in the last 5 years, you'll hear a lot of emphasis on the circular economy. And this is the idea that we should move away from linear value chains. So an example of this is, paper. You take, you cut down trees, you send the paper to the paper mill, you make pulp, you make paper, you then send that to the consumer uses it, they throw it away, it goes into a landfill, and you lose all those resources. Okay, and a circular economy, of course, is to wrap that back around itself. So instead of throwing it away at the end of life, you recycle. You recycle the material, you put it back into the system, send it back to the paper mill, and round it goes. And you keep those molecules in play as long as possible. And this is a really great thing, and we need to do it with every commodity, and it's really important that we do it for all the reasons that Bruce and everyone else has mentioned. But it's not nearly enough. And if you go to sustainability conferences, you get the idea, you might walk away with the idea that if we just have a circular economy for everything, we will achieve environmental nirvana. Everything will be solved. And that's not true. It is important to take each of the nodes of those value chains and wrap them around each other, around the perimeter of that circle. But the real prize is to reduce the size of that circle, the ecological environmental footprint, the area of the circle. And to drive this point home, I made a little cartoon. So here's a paper boy, and he's heralding the news that paper is now infinitely recyclable as he's running over an earth that's completely denuded of trees. Okay, you can use all your resources and still keep them in the commodity loop, keep them going over and over again, but you've also had huge environmental impacts in the process. Circularity is not enough. We have to do more than that. And so I like this idea of a conical economy. So what a conical economy is you take a circle and you shrink it down. You keep things circular. Circularity is extremely important. We have to do circularity for sure. But we also have to think about the total footprint of that system. And that includes sustainable use, but also includes sustainable recycling, lowering the impacts of recycling, because you use energy when you recycle, you use resources when you recycle, and all those things have to be taken into account. So really this approach, the conical approach, is something that we've had hard-boiled into the Sustainable Phosphorus Alliance since the outset. In our mission statement, it's right there, We focus, I should know this by heart, we're the central forum and advocate for the sustainable use, recycling, and recovery of phosphorus in the food system. Not just recycling and recovery, but sustainable use too. And not just recycling and recovery, but sustainable recycling and recovery. These are all really important pillars of this whole system. And it's also central, this idea is central and boiled into our phosphorus sustainability challenge I'm going to talk about. We have 10 goals in this challenge, and they all reflect this sort of conical approach to the phosphorus economy. One more bit of framing, if I could do, before getting into the nuts and bolts of how the challenge is going to work. So, how many of you are familiar with corporate social responsibility reporting? Okay, quite a few. CSR reports, corporate social responsibility, are these reports that most large corporations and many smaller companies are now putting out. And they announce their sort of maybe 3 to 5 big sustainability goals. The 3 top-level items, 5 top-level items. It could be things like climate change, water use, on the environmental side. It could be social sustainability, gender equity, labor rights, et cetera. And these goals aren't created in a vacuum. They're a reflection of the pressures that these companies feel from consumers, from investors, from regulators, to address certain sustainability issues. And so they're really a reflection of what we as a society think of as the most salient issues in sustainability. And so it's interesting, there's this guy, Andrew Winston, some of you may have read his book called The Big Pivot. He runs a company called Winston Eco Strategies, and he's done a survey, a landscape analysis of about 4,000 of these CSR goals. He's gone through all these reports and he's cataloged them and indexed them and found out which goals are these companies, which goals do these companies think are important, and therefore which ones are getting a lot of attention from we as a society. So it's instructive to go through these, and I went through them for a bunch of issues. GHG, climate energy goals, 1246. That's a big chunk, but I describe climate change as our biggest problem in 65 million years, so that kind of makes a lot of sense. We have 133 deforestation and paper goals, and 28 goals for VOC emissions. These are typically non-methane hydrocarbons that are emitted as part of petrochemical processes. I want to get a survey of the room, and no one who knows the answer can answer this, Matt. How many phosphorus sustainability goals out of these 4,000, given that we have 28 on VOCs and 133 on paper, how many do you think we have on phosphorus sustainability in the world? What's that? So you're going to say 0. Any other guesses? No other guesses? How many? What's that? 11, great. How about nutrients? Nutrient sustainability goals. Phosphorus, nitrogen. Anyone? 12. Great. Thanks for not guessing 0, because the answer is 0. 0. 0. These are Fortune 500 companies. None of them have a high-level goal on phosphorus sustainability. Okay. Some of them wrap this up into sort of sustainable agriculture, but it kind of gets lost in that shuffle. And let's remember what I said at the outset, phosphorus is the most important pollutant of our most important natural resource and commodity. This should be a much more salient issue in the public mind. It's not. And that's a huge issue for almost everyone in this room, if you think about it. If you're trying to get research funding, NSF you're not on their radar. If you're if you're a fertilizer company and you're producing a slow-release fertilizer, you're not getting the kudos and the credit you should be from the wider community for the hard sustainability work that you're doing. If you're a company that's recovering from wastes, recovering phosphorus, you have a harder time making the case to the public that what you're doing is important and to the cities that you're trying to sell your technologies to. This is bad for all of us. And one thing we can do is work together to make it a better situation, to raise the profile of the issue, show what everyone else is doing in the room, show who the leaders are, and galvanize more action. And that's what the Phosphorus Sustainability Challenge is. We're going to raise awareness about these issues. And again, what this is a platform, a website and ancillary promotional activity where you can go and make a commitment to reduce your phosphorus footprint. I'm going to do X. I'm going to recover so much phosphorus by 2020. Okay? And it's also going to be a place, once we have enough commitments in certain sectors around certain topics, where we can put together action networks, teams of like-minded organizations who can together decide what is the best definition for phosphorus sustainability in their sector, how do we best and most consistently measure and report it. Okay? Who needs to get involved? Everyone. So this is a diagram that we put together of the phosphorus value chain. You can see it's highly complex. There are all sorts of players in this chain. And every one of those arrows is either an opportunity for more sustainable use or an opportunity for recycling and recovery of phosphorus. And so there are all sorts of opportunities in the room that we can, and outside the room, of course, that we can move forward to advance this cause. How does it work? Okay, so we've developed, this is nuts and bolts finally. We've developed a set of a framework. So this is basically a set of specifications for how to frame a commitment, and then a set of sustainability goals. There's 10 goals that you can commit against. And then once you've done this, you can submit your commitment via the web, and we'll process it. We'll then go out and promote it. And of course, if you make a commitment, you want to promote it too, that you've committed to this, and you're a good person, and you've put forward the effort to address this issue. And then again, we'll develop these action networks around specific topics. What are the rules? The rules are pretty simple and mostly pretty intuitive. One, you have to make a new commitment. So it can't be something that you've already done or an existing public commitment. It's got to be something that you are saying, we're going to do. You know, we haven't done this yet, but we're going to do it by this year. You have to make a commitment that exceeds regulatory compliance. We're looking for progressive commitments, not just I did what I had to do. You have to address at least one of the key goals that we've identified. There's 10, and I'll read through those in a moment. They have to be SMART, using that acronym of SMART, meaning specific and aim, measurable, ambitious, relevant to the challenge goals, and time-bound. You have to get them done by a certain date. They must include implementation. So this isn't a research and development challenge. This is about products that are already out in the market, things that are past pilot scale, past field trials. You've actually done it and put it out in the market. And they have to be reportable annually. And that's because we're going to do an annual report that shows all the progress that's been made. Okay? Verification, we're not going to do third or second party verification ourselves. We may decide within those action networks, there may be a consensus that we want to use a certain verification body to verify the commitments. We will provide credit to people who actually go through second or third party verification of their data, but we're not going to do it ourselves. You will be publicly mocked if you lie about your commitment, so don't do that. But not such well. And then we'll disseminate this through our social media channels and more traditional channels. We're doing a lot of outreach to the media about this starting next week. The launch is today. This is the day you'll look back on and say, that's the day Matt wouldn't ever stop shutting up about the Phosphorus Sustainability Challenge. This is that day. We also, participants will obviously want to promote their own commitments to their audiences. And then you in the room, we really need you to sort of promote this and make commitments yourselves, but also forward the cause. Go out, tweet about it, put it on your social media, say, this is happening, you know, go participate. We need your help on this. Again, this is going to help all of us. So it only is going to work if everyone sort of pitches in. So what's our goal? One of our goals is to get 100 pivot goals to address phosphorus sustainability. That's our metric that we're using. When we get to that point, we'll know that phosphorus sustainability is on the map in the corporate sustainability world, and therefore it's on the map in the public mind. And of course, we get these other benefits, which are the real reasons we do these things. Communities get cleaner water, farms and industries get to reduce their supply risks, innovators get to sell their products, farms and utilities can save on compliance, taxpayers don't pay as much in remediation costs, and I think the issue that's most dear to my heart and also Jim's is that biodiversity also flourishes. Okay, so what I want to do is a bit of a group activity around this. So we're going to do this going into lunch for the next 40 minutes or so. I'm not sure how much time is left. But what we're going to do, sorry, everyone, is I'm going to do a quick read through the 10 challenge goals, and then I'm going to ask for each table to think about a hypothetical commitment. So take one of the challenge goals on the 10, and you've all got these in your folders. The goals are all listed, and the rules are all listed too. You don't have to read through all of the goals. Just pick one that you think is interesting or one that's relevant to you, and frame a commitment. Think of a commitment that you could make with this organization that meets really the last 3 of the challenge goals. The top 3 lines don't really make sense for a hypothetical commitment in this context, but the bottom 3 goals, they should be SMART commitments, they have to include implementation, and they have to be reported on annually. So take a little time to do that, and then have a discussion, maybe take 5 minutes, 10 minutes to do that. Then have a discussion about, in organizations, what does it take to get the internal buy-in to make a commitment happen? What do you need to do to sell an organization on actually framing and making a public commitment? And then we'll come back and we'll have a little bit of a group discussion around this. And then we'll have lunch. So you get a reward at the end. Okay? Any questions?
Is there benchmarking in your process? Do you anticipate, sorry. Is benchmarking a part of your process in terms of setting targets? You have to know where to start from. So give us for our hypothetical at least, give us a sense of where we're starting from.
Well, for your hypothetical, so this is wide open. We want to get to the point where we have enough commitments in the challenge that we can start coming up with collective ideas of where we should set benchmarks and where we should go from there. But for just starting out in the challenge and in this hypothetical, you can really make any commitment as long as it goes beyond regulatory compliance and it pertains to the challenge goals. So does that answer your question, or you look confused still?
I think in order to set a yeah, sorry, let's juggle the mic a little bit. In order to set a target and know how high I'm going to jump, I need to know how high I'm standing already, right? So, and how far there is to go, right? So I'm just wondering where does that come in, establishing the original footprint before you aim to commit to a higher or a smaller footprint, a higher target, right?
Well, you should know in your own organization where you sit right now, right? And you're committing to improve your behavior.
Okay,
Yep.
so that's assumed.
Yep.
That's all I'm making sure.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, hypothetically, you're just going to make an assumption about whatever theoretical company you're discussing, or organization, for the purpose
So,
of this exercise.
yeah, and I'm going to quickly read through the 10 high-level goals with you. So they're on, if you've opened up your pamphlet, they're sort of on page 2 and page 3 of this. High-level goals are use phosphorus on landscapes, including cropland, more judiciously. Okay, and you can read your own descriptions on the descriptions yourselves on this. Using phosphorus in animal feeding operations, including aquaculture, more judiciously. Sustainable reuse and recycling of phosphorus. Removing phosphorus from human and animal waste streams. Reduce food system waste and recover its phosphorus. Recover phosphorus pollution from surface waters. Reduce and recover phosphorus waste from industrial processes. This would be the other industries that aren't already covered. Manage landscapes to contain and recover phosphorus. Promote diets with lower phosphorus footprints. And improve the efficiency of phosphorus extraction from rock and conversion to products. Okay, so really just pick any one of these and decide as a group what you want to frame as a commitment, and then talk about internal buy-in. And then we'll have a discussion. I'll walk around and answer any questions.